Hi, and welcome to Revive and Rise. This is your host, Melody Parrish, and I have a wonderful special guest, Dr. Antonio Boyd. He's the president and CEO of Think Tank Consulting Group. And so he has joined us to talk about African American education. So thank you, Dr. Boyd, for coming in and speaking to us.
Thank you for having me, Melody.
And so as we're going to start talking, I wanted to kind of talk about African American boys and their education and how racism and trauma work in there, because research has shown that trauma changes you on a cellular level, but we'd like to hear more about what it does mentally and what you've noticed is a result in the educational part.
Well, Melody, first I want to tell you that your work is so important for not only just the young people in general, but also especially students of color, because we're starting to understand, and this generation of young people are starting to understand the importance of mental health. As you know, in context, because context is important, they're the generation that has grown up only knowing school shootings and murders inside their buildings. They're the generation that has gone through COVID, which in our research showed, I'm a professor at Northeastern University in Boston, but our research showed that COVID set our young people mentally back 5 years. So if you went into COVID as an 8th grader, mentally, the isolation, the issues that they had with socialization set them back 5 years. One example, I worked for an education intermediary at the time. I was actually getting my doctoral degree. And one example of that is the city of Las Vegas and the Las Vegas School District. That district, during the first 3 years of COVID, had 22 suicides.
Oh, wow.
When we looked at what was going on there, Las Vegas is one of the most social places in the world, right? Everybody goes to Las Vegas for a good time. And the students there are hyper socialized. Well, COVID allowed them to actually go from in-school learning to online and blended, and they weren't set up for that emotionally. And the separation caused anxiety, which then caused suicide. So first and foremost, I want to establish that although we're talking about African-American students of color as a context, actually your work and what you're doing around trauma actually applies to all students now. Because number one, they're the first generation where all they know is shelter in place. All they know is a possibility that an active shooter will be in their schools. All they know is the impact of COVID and going from regular school to online blended to back to regular school. All they know is issues of social emotional learning. So the dynamics in education has changed as such that this issue is far and wide, and it's not race specific. The Indian and indigenous communities face epidemic chronic disease in their communities, which impacts their parents, which impacts their ability to go to school. The issues in white communities with marriages and the opioid epidemic in those communities create dynamics in households that have never been seen before. So what once was kind of placated on African Americans is now broad, and also even the Hispanic communities with the displacements and not really knowing for sure if your house is going to be raided by ICE, puts all kinds of pressures on those kids. So when you talk about education, the context, the issues in this stuff going on, and actually how your podcast is trying to even have communications about this is broad. So I just want to thank you for having me. And then when it comes to African American boys, they grow up in a society where, they're assumed to be criminals. They're assumed to be problematic. They're assumed to be an issue. And so therefore, they not only have to fight against the environmental issues that they face, they also have to fight against the stigma. Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, the young man who was just jogging outside, and two gentlemen in Georgia just shot him down. This is their reality. This is their life. And so, once again, society has cast this on them, and they have to try to fight through it and live with it. But it's all traumatic for them. And, I had a young man, I wrote an article about a young man who grew up, and this is just a story. He grew up in Baltimore. Both of his parents were crack addicts. He was raised by his grandmother. He was driving one day, and the cops pulled him over. He's a straight A student. He was on the Mayor City's Council. He is now a PhD student. I mentor him. And the first thing he told his little brother is, 14-year-old little brothers, put your hand on, he was helping his brother learn how to drive. Put your hand on the steering wheel. Don't dig in your pockets. Be calm and let me talk. And as he reflected on that, he told the story that, why was that his first instinct? Well, because he didn't want his little brother to get shot. They were just, doing what we all did when we were little, big sister, big brother, mom, dad, taking you out to learn how to drive. And you had no idea that, it would be traumatizing just to teach a little 14-year-old kid how to drive in a parking lot. But for those two young men, it was traumatizing. So that's where we are,
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, that's where we are, like you said. I know, like I was telling one of my guests that I have a friend and she has a son. And when she taught him how to drive, she told him the first thing was where to keep your hands on the steering wheel. And you just think that's horrible. And, I've had other friends that have said when their teenage boys leave, they're like, I hope they come back in one piece, but there's no guarantee.
Right.
And just to live with that fear.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, once again, the biggest issue in education right now is not race specific. It is actually more kid specific. I think we're in a climate where all kids are traumatized. For various reasons. I mean, social media is traumatizing them. Television is traumatizing them. Society is traumatizing them. What would they do in their future is traumatizing them.
Right.
And they really, unfortunately, don't have the resilience that we had because they're hit with a lot more than we did. We didn't have 10,000 people on social media talking about us. We didn't even have anything like that. We just go outside and play, and we didn't have a cell phone. We had a house phone, and we were just fighting over who could talk on it, and we couldn't talk that long. If you wanted to socialize, you really had to be in person.
Yeah.
Now that's not the case.
Yeah. So talking about that trauma, do you think that it's maybe gender-based? Do you think there's a difference there, gender or age?
No, we're not. One of the things we're seeing, and this is ironic, is we're seeing actually more suspensions of girls than boys right now. And the reason that is because there's a tremendous amount of pressure on young ladies to look like Taylor Swift or to fit a certain image. The dynamics around sexuality for this generation are fluid, right? So there's a lot of pressure there. Like I said, the level of what we used to call adult stuff that kids are now dealing with is unparalleled. On the one hand, it's good. My 7-year-old grandson is an absolute genius, and I'm not biased to that. He is. Everybody said that. He's got a cell phone. He's highly into AI. He's building stuff on Minecraft that will be, structures that the greatest architects in the world will want. Now, that's all beneficial, but he has a cell phone at 7 years old, and his parents have to monitor that thing with all kinds of apps because of the exposure. I could imagine having a cell phone, let alone a phone at 7 years old. So you see what I'm saying? The technology and the exposure is actually killing us, in a sense.
Hmm. Oh, I see.
Literally.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're talking about. So what have you noticed? You're a mentor to young children, correct?
Correct.
And so what have you been seeing as a mentor, and where do you need to mentor the most? What specific parts?
So that's a good question. So what I understand is now I can go into context of black and brown boys. So in the case of African American young men, the biggest thing that you have to do, or what we're doing, or what I've been experiencing that is good, is just exposing them to things. When we grew up, we got exposed to things. We went on what they called field trips, and we got to see stuff, and that stuff that we got to see triggered our imagination. It made us think, I can be an astronaut, because we went down to the Museum of Science and Industry today, and I saw a rocket, and I actually sat in it. And so that's still the same context of what we have to do with young people today. I always say it starts with exposure. If you can expose a young person to something that they resonate with, and then you can continue to encourage them to be involved with it, then they dream about the possibilities. Right now, because my grandson is so incredibly smart, and I was just with him for my birthday, I'm going to immediately call my son and say, get that boy into every science camp that's available. Why? Because he's literally a science genius. He played, football. He got into fights on the football field. For some reason, he takes it too far. He fits in a world that most people won't push him to be a part of. But if we do this early, right? Who knows? That could be the next super scientist in this world. So it's about exposing them and giving them opportunities to see things. And then if they see it, they can be it. So that's the biggest thing. And that's for everybody, right? Now, the society right now, if you Google right now in society and you say all the headlines, the top 12 headlines on your Google is going to be some kind of sport. And America is big about pushing our kids into sports. All kids don't fit in sports. So you have to see what they like and then push them towards that. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, yeah, perfect sense. And that ties into your book, what you were talking about, the experiential learning. Yeah, can you talk more about that, and
Right.
maybe give some pointers to our listeners as what they can do with their children and how they can help influence them?
Right. So my research and what I went to graduate school for is I was able to be exposed to a high school that exposed me to a lot of different experiences. And what I mean by that is I don't use that word experience like an experience like going to the music park. I'm saying that I actually was in drafting and we did schematics to build a house. By having that hand-on experience with actually doing something, it gave me a vision of what I could do. They also, we did I was a DJ and I was using my communication skills. By actually being a DJ and using my communication skills, when I went to college, I knew I wanted to focus on communications and marketing. And what my research and work is around is that students learn better from experience. And as many hands-on experiences as we can give them, the better it locks them in on what they want to do. I started working at 12. I got a hands-on experience working as an usher and meeting people and talking to people and sitting people down. And that made me feel like I could communicate with anybody, which then led me to do what I'm doing now. I'm writing books. I'm doing podcasts. I'm speaking before people. Those experiences led me to that. And in particular, I believe students of color learn better through experience. COVID showed us this. Listen to this, Melody. When we were in COVID, in a typical high school, because it was online and blended, meaning that they did all their work online, students could work 4 hours for the entire 8-hour day, meaning to go to their classes in half-hour Zoom calls. And then they would go, because there was not a lot of gig workers, so every Chick-fil-A and McDonald's was looking for workers, right?
Yeah.
They would
That's
go to McDonald's and get a job and work 8 hours there, and they
mm.
were making more money and being able to do more stuff than they had done their whole high school career because they didn't have to sit in a classroom for 8 hours.
Oh wow, yeah.
And so when it came time to go back into school, they were like, they rebelled against it because they were like, okay, COVID showed us that we really only have to go to school 4 hours.
Mm.
We can spend 8 hours of our time working. Why do we have to go back to that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
They learned through experience that they could be more productive. We all learned that, didn't we? That's why there was a big push for hybrid workplaces, remote workplaces, because we
Yeah.
all learned we could be more productive at home, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Oh, well, that's interesting because I never thought about that with COVID and the online learning. Have you noticed though that there's the same amount of education with the online learning?
Well, it was an adjustment because, like, for instance, I'm in South Carolina. We have 47 school districts in our state. When COVID hit, we only had 2 that were ready to go online.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Every other district was what we call pen and paper districts. So it's a massive adjustment for the parents, the students, and the teachers. The other thing about it is parents just lost their mind because now I've got to really watch what little Johnny is doing in his homework. I don't have a teacher doing that for me.
Oh,
And I'm very ill prepared to use the technology that they're using. And I don't understand this new math, right? When I went to school, we didn't have that stuff. So it was a terrible dynamic for parents. So the reason why we're back in school is because it's just better for the emotional part of parents. Now they can go to work. They can drop little Johnny off. Little Johnny goes to school. He comes home, feed him, wash him, let him go to bed, do his homework. Life's a lot better. But
yeah.
educationally, at least for a lot of high school students, online and blended is better. So what education is doing now, just like colleges, is giving high school students more online and blended choices. Meaning you can go your whole senior year, and not ever go in a building because you're doing all your classes online.
Oh, wow. That would be good. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could work, and do the other things, or maybe
Yeah.
even take some college classes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So kind of like, are you saying this is kind of like um, a technical school kind of where you're having your classes, but then you're having hands-on, like a lab maybe of the
Well,
class?
no, a lot of high schools in particular and middle schools are moving towards practical experience. For instance, Olympic High School in Charlotte, North Carolina, they literally have a house that's on their campus. Why do they have a house? Because they partner with Habitat for Humanity and said, why don't we build a house on our campus teaching our students construction, all right, in real time, and then we'll, donate the house to a family. You could move a whole house, right?
Yeah.
They're learning how to, do construction. They're learning how to build rockets. They're learning how to be network engineers in high school. There's a high school in Orangeburg, South Carolina called a High School for Health Professions. In their sophomore year, they get a white coat. They learn how to be phlebotomists, nurses assistants. By the time they're juniors, they're making more money than their parents because they're phlebotomists in the hospital while going to high school. And the vision of that high school is to create more doctors for rural communities. And these
Oh,
kids are literally graduating from high school and getting recruited to medical school.
oh wow.
So it's hands-on learning. It's about training this generation for jobs early.
Early. Yeah. Oh, well, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, it wasn't like that when I was in school. It was just kind of shop class or
Well,
home
yeah,
ec.
but that it. So it wasn't like it is now from a technology standpoint. But it was exactly what we're talking about. So you had the option of shop, and for the ladies, they had home economics where they taught you how to cook and sew. Well, those are hands-on opportunities that if you wanted to go into sewing, or if you wanted to be a chef, or if you wanted to be a mechanic, you could. And the reality is, listen to this, Melody. In the state of Virginia, welders are making $300,000 a year now.
Oh, wow.
Because they build most of the ships, right,
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
Norfolk, and it's a career path where there's a lot of need for it. So they're making a ton of money. They're making more than executives, and they don't have to go to college. They go right out of shop class into that field.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that provides a great opportunity for people. I feel like a lot of things, at least when I was going to school, it was you graduate high school, you have to go to a 4-year college. That's just
Right.
what you do. But now there's more options. Like you're saying, there's more options in education. So,
Yes.
no, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So have you noticed any disparities in our education?
Yeah. So, Melody, there are always going to be disparities because education is to drive commerce, right? Education is to drive capitalism. As you well articulated, the pressure your mom and dad put on you, or your society put on you, was you graduate high school, you go to 4-year college, you go to 4-year college to get a big job, right? And so, how does that work for everybody? It doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't. Everybody can't go to 4-year college. Everybody shouldn't go to 4-year college. So there's always going to be disparities. There's always going to be individuals who get to go to Harvard and Yale, and then individuals who can only afford to go to community college. The reality is we just got to figure out, because our competition is figuring out how to best train everybody for the eventual outcome. And what I mean by that, this is very interesting, Melody, but this is the United States versus other countries. In Asia, from K to 8th grade, they don't even test their kids.
Oh, wow, yeah.
What they do is they teach them about courtesy, manners, how to eat well, how to get along, social skills, soft skills, how to greet folks, how polite they are, how to be disciplined, because they feel like if you're creating little human beings, the first thing is the person. Then they teach them all kinds of, in a very methodical way, skills in math and science. And then next thing you know, they have a society that's very productive. We, on the other hand, have our kids in 50 different sports, going 22 different directions. And then when the day is all said and done, we say, okay, go get on your game because I'm tired and I want to watch my soap operas.
Right.
And so that approach is causing chaos and all kinds of issues and disparities. Yes.
Yes.
And it's not just Black, it's not just white, it's across the board.
Mm-hmm. So do you think, because I've noticed that, when I was in school, we just played outside. We had, free time, and you, like, during the summer went to sports and everything. It wasn't like now, rigid, and every hour of the day is just kind of consumed in things. You got ball practice, you've got this event, you've got that event. Do you think that's kind of harming our education?
Well, yeah, but Melody, I go back to the point of your work. So your work is about trauma and helping people through. There's just this we're a country that wants to lead the world in everything.
Mm.
We're a country that is driving industry and all the economics of the world, not just the United States. It put a lot of pressure on the kind of workers, the kind of laborers, the kind of society we are. And there's been just more and more pressure put on kids, right? Because not only did they have to face the dangers of going to school now, that was never something you and I ever thought about. Now, maybe walking to school, we were a little afraid of the little neighborhood bullies.
Yeah, yeah.
But going to school was never I never thought about that. I never thought I'd get shot, right?
No.
Not only do we have to face the exposure of media, but now we got a lot of pressure on us to fit into a workforce. And that's why you see a lot of young people in their 20s after college still at home with mom and dad.
Okay.
Because they go through the whole process, right?
Mm-hmm.
they get their bachelor's and their master's, and then they go up against a world that's not friendly to all of that. And they don't have the resiliency to get through it. So then they go, Mom and Dad, can I just stay with you for a while? And then eventually, maybe in their 30s, they grow up and they go out there and they're okay.
Yeah.
When you and I, when we were 18, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
wasn't
right.
no coming back home and staying with mama in our 20s. That ain't happening.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's interesting that you're talking about these different things, because I have to say I never really thought about all of the different traumas and things that are happening to our children, and the difference between when I was going to school and now.
Yes.
So I know our time's coming to a close. Um, do you have anything else that you want to share with our listeners?
No, I just want to encourage you to continue to do this work. I want you to, Melody, spend a lot more time in the education space, focusing on our young people. If you look at the data around the work around social emotional learning and also what's going on with kids, you could spend the rest of your podcast having different guests who could talk about and uncover what's going on at a time when they may change education totally, which is going to put another level of pressure on kids. So I think this is a great podcast. I'm so happy to come and finally meet you. And also, I think, as I said, if I could say one thing, our kids need you to keep talking. I will never forget, in closing, when we had to work with the superintendent of Las Vegas school districts, and he was trying to figure out why are kids committing suicide, 22, or even being at university when I was a doctoral student, and we'd have classmates during COVID lose 15 family members, and their professors would get on them about, why are you turning in test late? I mean, we created a whole student organization just to emotionally support kids, young people, or graduate students who were dealing with very hard academics while going to funerals. And what it did to them emotionally is why you continue to do your work. So I'm really happy and proud that I got to meet you and also be on your podcast.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Boyd. And you're having another book. Don't you have a new book coming up?
Yes, so I have a book called The Booker T Blueprint, Experiential Learning in the Jim Crow South. And it's not only a book about the history of African-American education, but it also calls us back to, what he did is how he developed 2 universities and 5,000 schools, and they were charter schools, sort of, and how we might look at that again today when we're trying to decide as a country whether we want to do public school anymore, or do we want to do school choice, charter schools. What do we want to do? So that's a book that's out now, and it's Kendall Hunt is publishing it, and it's out there, and I encourage you to go take a look at it.
Yeah, it's a very good book. I've read it. It's very good, and you bring up a lot of good points.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you again, and you're more than welcome anytime to come back and talk to us and speak to us more about the education. And I just want to remind everybody that if you're having trauma, if you're having any problems at all, you don't have to suffer alone. You can come. I have an email and I have a website, so you can feel free to come and talk to me at any time. And thank you so much, Dr. Boyd. And I look forward to hearing from you soon.
All right. Thank you, Melody, and congratulations on your work.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.